Good evening out there, Irish Breakdown Nation. Welcome to another edition of Upon Further Review. We gotta change down here, Brian. We gotta change it to Upon Further Review.
Well,
Man.
no, that's usually someone else's job.
I know. I was not the first one in today. Full disclosure.
I was too busy changing the colors and all that other kind of stuff. So
peek behind the curtain. I was late getting in.
We're ready to rock and roll,
but
man.
No. This is, again, I've told this to Brian before, and I'll tell anybody that wants to listen, and any coach would say the same thing. Even though there was a lot to fix, especially offensively last night, right? Watching the game film is so much better when you know the outcome is clean.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like last week, like there was a lot of good to watch last week, but then you know that it doesn't end well, and it's just like it's depressing. But like this week, there was a lot to not like, but you know that they won. And so it's just a different scenario when you're going back and watching the film. And so we're going to talk all about the offense. We're going to talk about the defense, what we liked, what we didn't like. But before we roll into that, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, all that fun stuff. But we're going to break down this.
And remember, tomorrow we're doing a mailbag.
Yes, that's a new
just a heads up. So tonight we'll only be doing super chats tonight. We'll have a mailbag tomorrow. But if you have something you want to get addressed tonight by Vince and I instead of me and Ryan,
yes,
get the super chat in. But otherwise, mailbag tomorrow is going to be interesting.
Monday mailbag, Monday mail. That's got a nice ring to it. I dig it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're gonna do an upon further review of the press conference and some of the comments that were made post game, because we talked about it yesterday in the post-game show, because Brian didn't hear the comments that Marcus Freeman made in the post-game on the live TV version, because he was doing his thing after the game, and I was killing a little bit of time, so I listened to it, and we kind of hammered Marcus Freeman for what we thought
we responded to things that people said he said, and technically we were correct in what he said. He said that he wanted Audric Estime to go down, and I want to make sure that we're clear when we're all for criticism about something and it turns out to be not quite what we thought it was, that we come back and say, hey, look, that's not what he said. I still don't agree with what he said, but what he said was, if you listen to it, he wanted Audric to go down like the one and basically then run the clock out. And I would hope that they would have still tried to hand the ball off again and score, but at least that way you force Duke to call timeout and not give Duke as much time. So that's a whole lot different than trying to go down at the 30 and kick a 47-yard field goal.
Right.
So in fairness, that's a more common coaching decision, especially with guys that are sort of defensive oriented. I still don't agree with it. Your defense had been playing lights out all night. There was going to be 30-some seconds left in the game. Your defense has got to close that one out.
Just go down and score. Just go down and get points.
It would be different. Like, here's where, if Coach Freeman ever asked for my advice, and he hasn't and he won't, but this would be my advice. If it's a field goal game, that actually makes a lot of sense. That strategy makes a lot of sense, because you don't want to give them a chance to go down and, like, they only got to make really one big play to potentially be in field goal range. Now, their field goal kicker wasn't very good, but still, it's a whole lot different needing to get to the 35-40 to maybe have a chance to beat you with a field goal than it would be to, because you've got a place kicker that can kick the ball out of bounds every time. They're going to have to go 75 yards in 30 seconds to get a touchdown, the way that the game went. So in that instance where that score could potentially put you up a touchdown, at the very least, it's not, even if they don't get the 2-point conversion, it's a non-field goal situation. You take the point. So now there's a minute and a half left. Okay, I get it. So there are times when that would make sense, just in that particular situation, Vince, with under 40-some seconds when Audric started going off, you get the touchdown. And but what he said that we thought was just appalling, he didn't say to that degree,
which is great.
He said very clearly he wanted to go down at the one.
Which I'm happy about, because I was like, I was starting to be like, like, why is this decision being, you know what I mean? And so it makes me, I get a little bit more confidence in some of the decision making, and I know it's just one decision, but that would have made me wonder, you know what I mean, if that was what was instructed to the players at that point, you know what I mean? That's not, if you had a lights out field goal kicker, maybe, but even then you're putting so much has to go right on a field goal, man. The snap, the hold, like so much has to go right. Do you really want to put it up to that if you have other options? You know what I'm saying? And so I'm glad it turned out the way that it did, because I agree with you. The way the defense played, especially upon further review, the way the defense played, I'm happy they put it in the hands of the defense with 30 seconds to go.
But what he said, I disagree with, but I understand it.
Sure.
So I wouldn't, if I would have had, and this is on me, right? This is why you don't respond to what people said that someone said, right? That's 100% on me. And I usually try not to do that, but I responded to what people said he said, or at least my interpretation of what people said he said. And obviously that's not how things went down. So that's on me. I wanted to clarify. I still think in that situation, with the type of score it would have made more sense to take the touchdown there and then let your defense go win that football game. So that's that would be my take on that.
Sure. So. I saw something ridiculous on Twitter last night that Marcus Freeman went for 2 at the end because he knew what he needed to cover, which is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like the dumbest thing.
That's not even like, was it someone that said that? Or?
No, it was a national person.
It was like an actual person that gets paid for their opinions?
Yeah, it's a betting type of person. You know what I mean? But like,
it's the stupidest thing.
It's so dumb because here's the other thing.
This is what I mean, Vince, it's simple as this, Vince. Look, here's the deal, man. There's a lot of people that do analytics and do betting and stuff that have no clue about football. They just know numbers.
They look at numbers
about football.
Yes.
There's no reason to only be up 6 points at that point in time. None.
And the spread was 5.5. If he just kicks the extra point, it covers.
It's a 6 point.
You don't need to go for 2.
Thing I've ever heard.
So that was the even dumber part of that comment. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. But anyway, there was another comment that was made.
Yeah. So I was so appalled listening to the post-game press conference that after giving up 55 points, the head coach said he didn't have any issues with the play calling on defense. And it was really about the play. Oh, hold on a second. That was the wrong press conference. That was the LSU press conference. I'm sorry. I got confused. I got confused for a second.
Yeah.
My bad.
That can happen.
My bad. It was the LSU head coach that said the play calling was fine. It was all the players why they gave up 55 points. I'm sorry. I forgot.
They're just
I'm much
young.
happier.
They're too young.
I'm much.
That's my favorite part of that whole thing. It's like, where have I heard that before?
Oh, I just love it.
They're too young. And nobody else is going to walk through that.
Did you know we heard last night? You know we heard last night in Notre Dame's press conference? 0 excuses for why they played.
Exactly.
0.
Exactly.
And
we didn't hear any excuses last week either. I'm just going to throw that out there.
No.
So, and guess what? The young guys that somebody's having issues with, there's a lot of young guys at Notre Dame that have been making plays all season.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, you didn't hear the head coach at Notre Dame saying, hey, look, here's why we lost to number 6 Ohio State by 3 points, because there were times on offense where we had 4 true freshmen on the field at the same time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, it's terrible. I just love that. But I was listening to that, and I literally just started laughing. He seriously said there was no he saw no issues with the play calling. I thought he was going to talk about the offense, because Mike Denbrock called a phenomenal game. And then he said, the offense really is kind of the issue because they had chances to put the game away. They scored 49 points. Like, I don't know if Brian Van Gorder sent Matt House the same photos he has of Brian Kelly that made him not fire him in Notre Dame. I don't know if that's what happened, but I thought that was funny, and I just had to say that because I enjoyed that very much. And it's a lot easier to say that when Notre Dame wins than
seriously,
when Notre Dame loses.
You're
it's
right
funny. My mentions on Twitter and my DMs have been completely devoid of.
Empty?
I had one LSU fan reach out. One LSU fan reached out to me last night.
Oh yeah,
Vince, it was great. Yeah, one LSU fan reached out, and
I should have listened.
You want to hear what he said? Here's what he said. This is exactly what he said last night. He goes, "I am so sorry." Or no, I'm sorry. That was last week. He said, "I was wrong." And I said, "About what?" And he goes, "BK, we are not going anywhere. We just won't." And I said, "I tried to tell you." He goes, "Yes, you did. I was hoping you were wrong, but you were right." So it's like,
I freaking love it, man.
Tip the cap to you, man. Tip the cap to you. But let's get back to Notre Dame, because Vince, I wrote an article today that is true, and we'll talk more about it on Tuesday. but this is a great win because you played your D game on offense. One side of the ball had to pick you up and carry you. It did.
Mm-hmm.
Side that struggled needed to finally do something when it mattered. They did. And it resulted in a team that won. And good teams have to be able to win games like this because nobody brings their B+, A-, A game every week. I've pointed out Georgia against Missouri last year. Notre Dame trailed Duke several fewer minutes than Georgia trailed 6 and 7 Missouri last year in a game that they needed to come back in the fourth quarter and win. You've got to be able to win games. However, the point that I made in the article was, but then you look at what Georgia did after that, right? It's easy to say, well, hey, Georgia had a game like this against Missouri last year, and you say, yeah, they did. It's very true. But here's the difference. They came out the next week against Auburn, beat them 42-10. The next week against Vanderbilt, won 55-0. The next week against Florida, won 42-20. The next week at home against, at the time, number 1 Tennessee, they won 27-13, and it was a dominant game. The next week they go on the road against a ranked Mississippi State team, beat them 45-19. Right? So it's one thing to say, hey, this happens to everybody, but the best teams learn from these games and don't make those same mistakes again. That's the difference, and that's what Notre Dame has to do. In 2009, I've pointed this game out about how Alabama needed like 2 blocked kicks to beat.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
A not very good Tennessee team in 2009. Right? I've talked a lot about that. But what did Alabama do the next week? They came out and at the time beat a top 10 LSU team that next week. Right. And so, look, you're going to have days like that, but you learn from it, you bounce back and you get rolling. And that's what Bama did that year. Then they went out the next week, beat Mississippi State by 28, beat Chattanooga 45-0, beat a pretty good Auburn team on the road that next week, decent Auburn team on the road that next week. And then of course, smacked Florida and Tim Tebow and Urban Meyer in the SEC title game. So you've got to build on it. And that's what the Upon Further Review is about. Okay. We'll talk about the emotional stuff and what we learned about this team, what they got to show. But now it's about improvement. And a lot of the improvement, Vince, is going to come on offense. So what I want to actually do is I want us to actually start on defense because this is going to be a much, much shorter segment.
Yes.
So, Vince, let's kick off our actual Upon Further Review of the game.
Yes.
With some talk of the defense.
So a lot of things to like about what the defense did. And I will say that upon further review, I liked it even more, to be honest. And they made Riley Leonard's job very, very difficult. They made him look pedestrian at most of the time, right? And now to be honest with you, I do blame their offensive play calling a little bit because I think they should have gotten the quarterback run going maybe a little bit earlier. But Notre Dame was making their life miserable, and they were getting the one thing I liked the most was they were getting pressure with 4. And we haven't seen that enough up to this point, but I think they did a really good job of that last night.
Let's start with the quarterback run stuff and then go into the front 4.
Okay.
Because I think those two things kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
The quarterback run stuff, Vince, I get what you're saying, and you're not at all wrong. But when we've talked about Duke, we have said in the past, they don't like to do a lot of designed quarterback-only runs. They like to let Riley Leonard get his yards off reads and off scrambles because there's less punishment in those situations. Where you call quarterback power, quarterback counter, and stuff like that, you're the lead ball carrier, and if they read it right, you're getting hit by 3 guys.
Right.
And we did see Riley on some of those runs. Like he broke the one, and then he had another where he made somebody miss, and there was bad tackling and that and all that. But he took some hits in that game as well. And that's why they don't like to do that unless they have to. Now they eventually adjusted and were able to rip off a couple runs. But I'll say this, Vince, about the way that Notre Dame played. There are about 6 or 7 execution mistakes and 1 bad call. There was 1 call where I thought Notre Dame by alignment and by the way they called it were out of position, and they allowed Duke to get a big run, and that was on that quarterback counter play. Outside of that, I have – and I'm not a big Al Golden guy. I don't love his defense. That's just I've never hid this. It's hard for me to find a whole lot of stuff to critique from last night. Most of it's just execution stuff, and then and that's on him. Like you can't have your guy, you can't line up offsides twice. That just can't happen. You've got to have your guys a little bit better prepared for some of those situations. But Vince, man, the tackling's got to get a whole lot better. If I had to find one thing about the defense, it's the tackling was better. And it wasn't just missing in space. Again, it was angles. You know, the play where Benjamin Morrison got stiff armed by Riley Mills, or Riley Leonard. It's a terrible angle, right? And here's the other thing about the overall performance, Vince, about it real quick that I forgot to say. You played a phenomenal game, and your best player played one of his worst games he's had at Notre Dame in Benjamin Morrison.
That's true.
Like, he had one of it. For him.
Yes.
Like, that's still a good night for most corners. But for him, that was his personal work. I say it's his worst game since Syracuse from last year. You know, where he was bad in the first half, pretty good in the second half. But a big part of the success, as we said, I thought Notre Dame's game plan too, they did a couple things really well. Number one, they were forcing the ball out of Riley Mills' hands, or Riley Leonard's. I'm going to say that all night. Riley Leonard's hands on a lot of those runs. And here's why it's going to be confusing. Yeah. And they were using Riley Mills at times to do that. So what they were doing, as we talked about last night, they were crashing the edges to basically, so when they ran read zone or power read, they would basically crash inside. Well, on power read, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get that end to work out and then go with the sweep, and then you keep and you get up inside. On read zone, you want that guy to crash, and then you're going to pull. So basically what Notre Dame was doing is we want him to give on power read, and we want him to keep it on inside zone. So if you go look at it, when they were running the power read, so power read for you guys is basically the quarterback is actually running the power play, right? Gap down, pull around.
He's the one running inside. He's
Correct.
Running the straight
and then the
line.
back or the receiver is actually running a sweep outside, a sweep. So he's going to ride it. He's going to read that end man. And if that end man goes out, he pulls and runs vertically and follows the blocker. If that end man comes down or hesitates at all, he's going to give and let the jet sweep get outside. Well, what Notre Dame did is basically they said, hey, we're going to have the edge, take it, and then the tackle looped, and then Marist would run with the jet sweep or the linebacker. And I know J.D. Bertrand chased it down once as well, but usually it was the other times it was Marist. Did a great job because it was basically our linebackers are as fast as your running backs. That's basically what Notre Dame decided, and they were correct on that. And so they did a nice job with that. But see, that concept also set up nicely for the read zone, because on the read zone, they would crash that end and then loop Riley Mills around. So the end would force the pull, and then Riley Mills is going right outside and just sitting there waiting on the quarterback. And Riley Leonard cannot make Riley Mills miss. He could not make him miss the tackle. Right. Like, Riley was very disciplined getting outside, not overplaying it.
And you need to be super disciplined to do what you're describing, because you know you're not always going to be the guy that's tackling the ball. I mean, and defensively, you want to go to the ball, and there's a lot of things that you want to do instinctively, right? It's like defending the triple option. We talk about this all the time. You got to do your job. You got to do your job. You got to do your job, and it gets boring. And when you try to do something that's outside of what your role is, that's when there's a big play. So you got to give a lot of credit to Riley Mills, because maybe it didn't show up in the stat sheet, right? But he did his job over and over and over and forced the ball to where Notre Dame wanted the ball to go. Like, you know, what's the internet meme? Like, he knew his assignment, like, you know, he did it over and over again. And it proved to be very successful, because the tackles for loss were huge and the linebackers were flowing downhill. It was awesome. Like, it was awesome.
So that then tied into what I think a lot of the other success was, because they had like one long run from the backs, and that was on the play where I still don't know what Marist was doing. That was just poor execution. I mean, Marist has got to scrape over top and make that play. That was poor execution by Marist. They ran a counter play. Marist has got to crash and blow it up. It was really the only really bad play had all night, and what was otherwise a pretty good night. I mean, he had about 3 or 4 mistakes. Guys are always going to make mistakes. That was the one, like, what are you doing play that Marist had. And for all the people that don't think he's a good football player, that's the only play they're going to remember. But Marist did a lot of really good things.
Of course. I mean, he had 2 consecutive plays that were excellent. The one where he broke up a screen pass because he read it. Like, you could see on the TV copy, he's running. It was a bunch, and he was at the front of the bunch, and he immediately blew up the bunch and went to the guy in the back. And then the TV copy kind of went away from him, but you could tell he was heading in that direction. And batted it down. Like, I mean, that was a great play. And then the very next play, he scrapes over the top and comes down and tackles the kid for a loss. Like, 2 consecutive plays where it's like, that's.
Well, they tried to do that wheel stuff out of the backfield against him as well. And that's something we talked about this during the week, Vince. They killed Clemson with that.
Yes,
I mean, just
all night.
They had 3 catches for over 70 yards against Clemson on that, and they played it very well. So there was a lot of stuff that I liked. There was one blitz I didn't like, but that's not even the blitz. It's just the way you play the nickel. We talked about that last night. We'll need to rehash that. The other part of what I liked about what we saw from the defense, Vince, was we saw Al Golden do what we've been begging him to do in 2 areas. Number 1,
I know exactly what
he
you're
turned the
going with
D-line
this one.
loose. And number 2, he mixed up how he used his box. We didn't see the linebackers just crashing all night. We saw him crashing at times. We saw him show blitz. I mean, and not even just lining up but like the whole oh, I hear him coming. I'm trying to time up the snap. Oh, I'm coming. Snap the ball and I'm dropping under coverage. Like the whole body. I mean, they were like J.D. Bertrand and Maris Leofau deserve Oscars for how they performed at times last night on their blitzes. Because when you'll see teams that'll line up and the linebackers at the line of scrimmage, and dude, I know you're dropping. Your whole body language is that you're about to plant on that front foot and drop. Right. And then there's the guys that are faking it, they're overdoing it. Okay, I know you're not coming because you're trying to let me know too much that you're coming. They would kind of do it oh, I tried to time the blitz and I didn't time it perfectly and I got to go back. And then they would do it again and then boom, they drop. Then other times they would come. But then there was a lot of snaps last night, Vince, where they just let the linebackers just read and react. Now, It cost them on that one play because Maris didn't read it effectively. Right. But it also resulted in a lot of plays. Yeah. And you can't do that if you don't let your defense attack. And we had somebody in the chat talk. We've talked a lot about the crashes. They have had a lot of ineffective line games this year, a lot, because a lot of their stuff was basically left and right. I'm going lateral this way. I'm going lateral this way. And what I loved about what they did last night is a lot of their stuff was vertical. You're going vertical here. I'm coming vertical here. And it allowed them to penetrate. And even though they didn't get a ton of hits on the quarterback and they had 2 sacks in the game, they had Riley Leonard thrown off of his back foot all night.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. A lot of inaccurate
he
passes,
couldn't step
a lot of throwaways.
And there wasn't anywhere to go anyway. I mean, if we're being honest, if you go look at the all-22, there weren't a lot of openings.
Right.
They covered the receivers pretty well for the most part. They had 1 drop and a couple other plays where maybe they could complete a 7 or 8 yard pass if he doesn't have someone in his face. But for the most part, there was nowhere to go. But even if he had time, but here's the reason why it matters. He wouldn't have had stuff to do, but if they weren't able to get pressure, there would have been run lanes that he could have planted and ran through. But he couldn't do that last night because they were so aggressive coming up the middle. And it was Howard Cross, it was Riley Mills, it was Javonte Jean-Baptiste, it was the linebackers, and there just was nowhere for that kid to go.
Right.
And I got to tell you, man, if they can find ways to do something along these lines week after week after week,
yes,
I'm going to love this because we have said all year, and what do we say before the game? This is a really good offensive line. Now, they didn't have Graham Barton. That hurt them, but that's the left tackle. They dominated the guards and centers all night long.
Right.
And they're good football players and veteran football players. And this is a very good offensive line. And Notre Dame kicked their butt last night. We talked a lot about how Duke's defensive line kicked Notre Dame's defensive line's butt. I'd say the same thing about the Notre Dame defensive line. The difference is Duke's offensive line actually played well from an assignment standpoint. They battled, they tough. It was just Notre Dame's dudes are better than their dudes. I mean, that's it. Yeah. It was just simply, they were trying their best. It was Notre Dame guys, we'll get to that, but it was sloppy technique. It was a lot of those things. That wasn't the case for Duke's guys. They just got their butts kicked. Mm-hmm. And that was nice to see. Okay, they have it in them against one of the better offensive lines they're going to play against, in my opinion. And they more than hell. I mean, this is a better O-line than what Louisville has. It's a better O-line than what USC has. It's a better O-line than what Pitt has, although that's not saying a whole lot. It's a better O-line than Wake Forest and Stanford. And the only other line that they're going to play that might be as good as this one is Clemson's, maybe. And Clemson's is more of a good run blocking line at times. They're inconsistent. This is probably the best line that they're going to play this year, in my opinion. It's one of the 2 best lines they're going to play this year. Now, it's not as good without Graham Barton, but that wasn't the position that hurt Duke last night. That was actually one of the disappointing things, is that their edges weren't able to beat their left tackle a whole lot last night. That was actually one of the disappointing things. But yeah, they turned the D-line loose, Vince, from the start. And Howard Cross had a monster game, great. But he was not alone. This was not this is one I said last night, and after watching the film, I still believe it. This is one of the best interior defensive line games I've seen since Jerry Tillery in 2018. And the difference is Jerry Tillery had a great pass rushing game that night. He had 4 sacks. Howard Cross dominated in the run game and the pass game tonight. This performance was even better than that one, in my opinion. So, and then when they needed somebody to win the game at the end, I mean, were the odds of Duke scoring slim? Yeah, but they still had odds when they had the football.
Oh, sure.
And he ended it. And he ended it with that sack. So, but it wasn't just him. It was Riley Mills played great. Gabriel Rubio played great. Javonte Jean-Baptiste continues to be a really good football.
He has exceeded my expectations a little bit. Like I thought maybe he'd be a specialist pass rusher, kind of a depth piece or whatever, but he has really shown that he can play. And, obviously there's a really good defensive line over in Ohio that he was kind of buried behind, but he was out in third down and stuff like that. He has played really, really well, especially as of late. Last 2 games, he's been really good. And if he can keep this up, man, this D-line is going to be tough to handle. Tough to handle. Whoops.
Agree. I thought Nana played well in limited snaps. I thought Jason Onye didn't play a whole lot. I thought he was disruptive, and maybe 5 or 6 plays. He was disruptive in his snaps. I did not like what I saw from Jordan Botelho for a lot of the game. Again, I didn't. I thought Josh Burnham was pretty good in his snaps. I thought Junior Tuihalamaka had his best game of the season. I thought Junior was pretty good. He was physical. He played with a little bit more certainty, like he knew what he was doing a little bit more than in the past.
He's going to get some reps next week.
Yeah, him and Josh. Yeah, first half. There's no Botelho. Yeah,
which I'm. Of course, I would love Jordan Botelho to be available in the first half. I think it's stupid that he's suspended for the first half. That's a
dumb rule
conversation.
Such a dumb rule.
I will also say this is a great opportunity for these 2 young guys to make some plays against a subpar offensive line from Louisville. And I think that they're going to if people don't know who these 2 are yet, and obviously the people in our chat do because they're super knowledgeable on football and all that, but they're going to open some eyes, man. I'm telling you in the first half. And Jordan Botelho is a good player, Wally Pipp, just saying.
Yeah, I mean, you hope that this is kind of the thing that gets Jordan to wake up and get back to being the guy
for sure
that he needs to be. He did a couple nice things, but overall, I didn't think he played great last night. And that's my thing is Vince is I thought the D line just as a whole played great last night. And one of the things we said is, is it a now Washington problem? Is it now Golden problem? I don't know the answer. And I don't think last night necessarily said it was one or the other. All I know is whatever the cause was before. Yeah, those kids, and they were. And it was a lot. Here's a mark of good coaching, Vince, and leadership from a player standpoint is the stuff that we complained about the week before, not using your hands, just letting yourself get blocked, not being aggressive, not playing. They fixed all that. They well in those areas, and a week later. And that's what you want to see from a veteran group. Like, hey guys, we got it's almost kind of like obviously the coaching had to focus on it, but it was almost like kind of like there was you want veteran group, you want really competitors of any age to have a little bit of pride to when they give up a game-winning drive and they don't make those stops and they do kind of get their butts kicked a little bit to say, I don't want this ain't gonna happen again. Right, we're not going to let this happen again. I'm going to come out next week and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And we saw that from the defensive line last night, Vince. We did. Right. We saw a group that did not play well the week before as pass rushers come out and play much better as pass rushers. And they were even better as run defenders than they were the week before against Ohio State. Because that's what we said is like they're pretty darn good against the run the week before.
Yeah.
It was they weren't making plays on the football, right? So not a lot of tackles for loss. Not a lot of production on the ball. They were physical and stout and holding their assignments and all that. Well, they were allowed to attack on Saturday against Duke. And the results were really impressive numbers. I mean, just look at your 2 starting defensive tackles, Vince. So these are the official numbers. That's the Ohio State game. Let me pull up the Duke game here real quick.
They sent out some new ones.
I'm like, those numbers. Yeah, I did. I said, those numbers aren't right. I'm like, they had way more than that. So if you look at the final numbers, Vince, the starting defensive tackles last night combined for 20 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss and a sack. Those were all on Howard Cross.
Howard, yeah.
And 2 forced fumbles. And let me go look here real quick. Let me look at the Pro Football Focus numbers. And that duo combined for 7 pressures on the quarterback and 12 run stops. 8 by Howard Cross. He led the team, and Riley Mills was second in total run stops. So they obviously Howard Cross graded out high. This is Pro Football Focus, graded out higher as a pass rusher, but Riley Mills graded out higher as a run defender slightly. They were both very good in that regard, although I'd still argue the number they have is way too low. So just love what I saw from the D-line last night, Vince. Yeah. And it was confirmed. It was like, okay, they're using their hands, and the vertical stuff was really what caught my eye on the rewatch more than live, was how,
because that was the frustrating part before, right? Is that they were just not being asked to get vertical. I don't
a lot of square feet at the point of contact.
Yes.
Right. Where last night it was more get in there, rip inside,
get skinny and get through. Yeah.
Or get skinny or take a side and rip through that guy and get vertical, as opposed to flat feeding. And because like what they were doing in past weeks, even against Ohio State, was they would take those D linemen and they would rock them back, but they would stay square to them and they would keep their feet square. I mean, they kicked that guy's butt,
control,
but then they couldn't get off blocks at that point in time.
Right.
Last night they were kind of getting more of a lift and more of a push, but then they were also taking sides. So they were still kind of taking on those blocks and knocking those guys back. Right. But then they were mixing it up with, they were shooting gaps too. They were twisting and stunning. And I mean, I got to tell you, I loved the game plan, and I hope this is an adjustment, not a one-time thing.
Right.
That's the thing we don't know, because Al Golden has been prone to kind of coming up these great game plans one week, like NC State, where I got on here and was like, that's one of the best games he's ever called, and one of the best. And then the next week in Central Michigan, we left the game like I still to this day don't have a clue what they were trying to do defensively. Like, don't have a clue. So hopefully this is like, hey, look, you know what? These guys are weapons, and when we use them effectively, it makes our linebackers better. Because last night, Marist had 3 pressures last night on only 8 pass rushes. Remember we said before they had like 100 like pass rushes, and they only had like 12 total pressures and like 9 hits on the quarterback. Last night, Marist Liufau only blitzed 8 times, and according to Pro Football Focus, he had 3 pressures. Jack Kaiser only blitzed 3 times. He had 2 pressures. J.D. Bertrand blitzed 9 times. He had 1 pressure. It's not real good. So that's 20 pressures or 20 blitzes from your starters. They had 6 pressures. We went from a rate of like 1 every 9 or 10 to 1 every, 3?
3, yeah.
Right? That's because the volume was less. The defensive line was more aggressive. The O-line could not get off those combos to get to the linebackers. Right. And the linebackers were hitting holes much deeper because they reset the line of scrimmage so well in their favor. So again, you were still able to have some success with your linebackers getting after the quarterback. You're still able to do that, but you were able to do it with a lot less needing to blitz.
Right.
Right. Yep. And it made your blitzes that much more effective. When you can come out in the game and Howard Cross has 6 pressures, 3 hits on the quarterback. Javonte Jean-Baptiste has 5 pressures, 1 hit on the quarterback. Riley Mills has a pressure. And Josh Burnham had a pressure on only 6 pass rushes. You add those, and then all of a sudden your linebacker pressures are becoming a lot more effective, because in past games we talked about, Vince, where they'd have a lot of pressures, but like not a lot of hits on the quarterback.
Right.
This game, they got a lot more hits on the quarterback, and that was on top of the pressure. So that was good to see. I was very happy to see that last night. And then at times they just said, "Hey, it wasn't a pressure per se. There were also plenty of snaps where he just was uncomfortable because they were just driving the guards, and you got to do that, especially against a mobile quarterback, because the danger could be overcorrecting, doing too much twisting and stunning, and then you hit it wrong, and that quarterback's creasing you for a big gain." They mixed it up nicely where at times they would just kind of bull rush into the backfield to where if Riley Leonard takes off, I'm just disengaging, going to get into the guy. So really, really, really liked what I saw from them last night. So just play calling, D-line stepped up, props to that group, props out Washington. It was one of the best D-line games we've seen in a couple of years. The D-line, this was better than any game I thought we saw last year from the D-line. Against a quality opponent, Like, they ate up UNLV and Cal in the second half. Those teams had terrible offensive lines. This was against a really good offensive line, and they ate it up. And so that's my big takeaway from the defense. There's not a whole lot else outside of that. We love the game plan. Am I okay to speak for both of us in that regard, Vince?
Oh,
love
yeah,
the game
100%.
plan.
Yeah. Yep.
Execution
I just liked it was much more of a balance between letting 4 go and then bringing 5 or showing pressure and dropping. Like, it just wasn't a blitzapalooza. You know what I mean? Which at times it felt like that earlier on in the season. And that was troubling for me, And so I much, much, much more preferred the way that they went about it this time. And it was more effective. You know what I mean? And like you said, I hope this isn't a one-off, and we're going to talk about the offense here in a little bit, which I hope is a one-off, but yes. I hope this was not a one-off, and it's something that they can build on, and it's something that this defense is going to be because the talent that they have on defense, this is how you should be calling the defense. This is where they're going to be at their best.
Right.
You're allowing your guys to make plays.
Right.
And that's
allowing your front.
Yes.
Allowing your front
Correct.
to make plays. And they rewarded him for it.
Right.
They rewarded him for it.
And that's what I'm hoping. It's like, okay, you guys, I let you guys off the leash a little bit, and you guys went and did your thing and, made plays. Like, your nose guard had the most tackles on the, like, that's right. His stat line was crazy.
This is the point, Vince, when your defensive tackles are making that many plays on the ball, again, 20 tackles last night, that you're going to be hard to beat. You just are. Because they're the closest thing to the football. And that's why, there was a couple times where Duke's getting tackled 2 yards past their offensive line. And it was like a -1. It was a 0-yard gain because they were getting past the line, but they pushed the line so far back that the line of scrimmage had been reset. And that's something we talk about. Yep. Tackling was an issue last night at times. That continues to be an issue. That's got to get fixed. But, there's not a lot that needs to be said about that beyond just – it is what it is. And I watched a lot of football yesterday. I saw tackling is just an issue in football right now. It's
an issue, and it's at all levels, by the way. Like, all level. I watch a lot of high school football. I watch a lot of college football. Like, it's an epidemic because of the way it's an issue in the NFL. Like the NFL games, if anybody watching those games, tackling is an issue, folks, because of the way practices are. Practices aren't the same as they used to be 25 plus years, 20, 25 plus years
I just
ago.
feel like there needs to be somewhat of a happy medium.
Yes,
with
agreed.
This.
They've gone way too far
to
this side of never. Yeah. Like, I know there's plenty of programs that never put lowers on ever.
Yeah.
Like,
well, you remember when Navy did that the COVID year?
Yeah.
Navy, that COVID year, they're like, we didn't do any tackling, and then they went out and they were just god awful. They couldn't tackle anybody. They couldn't make anybody miss. So anyway, that'll do it for the defensive side, Vince. Look, we got a lot more to talk about tonight, but do us a favor, folks. If you could, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast. And just a reminder, we'll be doing a Monday mailback tomorrow. It's our new schedule. Our new schedule is going to be a lot of fun. So do us a favor and hit that. You don't have to wait till the show's over to hit that like button, everybody. We appreciate that very much.
All right.
Ready to talk some offense there, Vince?
Let's talk some offense here because we decided to get the happiness out of the way early.
We almost didn't even want to talk about the defense at all.
Right.
Like, we really, because it was just like, but I really wanted to kind of throw some praise.
Because and deservedly so. And I'm glad we did.
The reason we said that is because, like, usually this tends to take more of a critical, this show tends to be more critical, like critiquing wise. And the whole point was like, there's just not a lot to critique.
All right.
It was really good.
Yeah,
so like, hey, let's talk about what we really liked. And
so
it's a little bit different than we normally do, but it was really hard for me to say that. It's really hard for me to find something that had too much fault with in defense, but offensively,
my offensive notes are about half a page right here, and then this is the defensive notes, like right here, like it. Like, so we got a lot to talk about offensively here. So let's start with the run game, Brian. Obviously the run game scheme wise was what's the best word for it? It was unimaginative. It was not. Go ahead. You're going to be more articulate.
It was a little bit. So looking just kind of overall at the offense, to me, it actually, the scheme wasn't as bad as I thought it was. in the pass game.
Execution.
In the pass game.
In the pass
there was
game,
a lot of execution problems. The offensive line played really bad. Run game wise, I felt like it was a combination of your line didn't play well, but you didn't adjust to it. And Duke had you scouted pretty well, and you didn't adjust to it. That was kind of my issue. And here's what was happening. So Notre Dame had been running, and you, if for those on the message board, you know this because you read those breakdowns I do, where I dive into the statistics and I show you here's what Notre Dame is running, here's the percentage of it. That's what their GAs and analysts are doing in advanced scouting. They're tracking those. This is how many gap schemes they run. They run it this many times to open, formation. This time they run it to close. They run it with the backside. They do this. They're scouting all day. They run this into the boundary this many times. They run to the field this many times. Here's their tendencies. That's what your scouts do. And Notre Dame had some success in recent games. It started against NC State. This is the first time we really saw them do like a heavy dose of that power stuff. And it worked really well. Ran an 80-yard touchdown on just an old school power play. Then we saw it have some success against Central Michigan, and it was a play where they really had some success with it, running some wrinkles of it. They were running like inside zone and power lead against Ohio State out of the 21 personnel. So it was very creative, and it led to them having a lot of success against what is a really good Ohio State run defense. This game, it was kind of like you just kind of went with what had been working, and there weren't a lot of tendency breakers. And there weren't Duke was prepared for it, and Duke crashed it hard. So the way that Duke defended it is when they would see linemen pulling, they would do two things. Number one, they would crash it hard, and they were trying to funnel the run back inside because they were also then crashing off the backside. So schematically, that's what Duke did that gave Notre Dame problems, is they kind of just squeezed everything and they funneled everything inside.
Yeah.
Their linebackers were very aggressive getting downhill because they weren't as concerned about the bounce, because they did a really nice job of, they were bringing their safeties down. Because remember, they're a 3 safety defense. They were bringing their safeties down to protect against any kind of bounce, because Audric Estime is a heck of a player. He's not a guy that Duke was necessarily worried about bouncing against them. They would have leverage the way that they play the safeties. They'd be leveraged pretty well. The concern would be, okay, does he face plant me? That would be the concern about Audric in the boundary. And so I thought they had that part of it schemed. And when Notre Dame did have a little bit of success running the football, more often than not, it was inside zone. And the reason the inside zone was a little bit more effective is they were able to just kind of step and drive, because Duke wasn't doing a lot of twists. They were just crashing, slanting, crashing. The twists were more common second level twists. And zone was stuff where you started to get a little bit more of a lean on them. And I thought that was something that I would have liked to have seen Notre Dame do more of, is and the surprising thing, Vince, is that is normally what their main run is. They're usually a very heavy run team. Now, I understand actually why Notre Dame went into this game with the game plan they did, because the way Duke normally plays, gap schemes can be effective against them. They can. But Duke was prepared for the fact that Notre Dame had been so effective running the football with the power schemes against Ohio State. Duke was prepared to scout that, and they played that well, and Notre Dame never really adjusted. And then when they would do stuff that I thought could have hit outside, they ran a couple toss plays. The first time you ran it, I understood you ran it. It worked. It worked in Central Michigan. That toss play, worked big there. But this is a much more athletic defense on the second and third level, especially the third level, than Central Michigan was. And they were getting to it. They were just too quick for the linemen. That's something that hurt them. The linemen did not block well on the second level, but then that's also why that needed to be a run that went to Jadarian Price or Jeremiah Love. And that was the other thing, is I didn't think they complimented Audric enough in this game.
Right.
To kind of give them that change of pace enough. And so those are things that I would have liked to have seen, Vince, from the run game, where, and the thing too is, I was even more surprised by it because we saw almost no 13 personnel on Saturday. And the one time they ran power in the first half and it worked is because they put Cooper Flanagan in the game on that first touchdown, and he destroyed someone.
Yes, he did.
That kid is going to be a horse of a blocker in his career.
Yes, he destroyed the kid he was blocking. I mean, just put him, and that's right where the run went, by the way, right off of his tailpipe. And it was like I had to go back. Like I was watching it and I saw, oh, they're in 13.
Yeah.
And he comes across the formation and he ends up blocking that kid. And I was like, who the heck is that? And I had to kind of go back. I was like, okay, yes, he's an amazing blocker. And it shows.
Yeah.
And it's like, I wish they could get him on the field
a
little bit more. Now, maybe that telegraphs that they're going to run the ball or whatever.
But here's the thing. They weren't doing anything with Holden Stace to utilize Holden Stace's unique skill set, which is like running it was all like middle routes and in routes. And it was like they weren't really utilizing Holden that way. They just kind of had him blocking a whole lot. So it's like, well, if you're going to do that, then go 13 personnel at times, and then have Holden, put Mitchell outside or something. I mean,
right.
And so that was a bit problematic. So schematically, I just didn't like the run game adjustments. That I understood more what Notre Dame was trying to do when you look at the context of what had been working and then what normally would work against Duke. Sure. But it became very apparent early that Duke had a good plan for it, and Notre Dame didn't. And even little things, Vince, like they ran that little shovel pass early to Jeremiah Love and got 7 yards on was it the field goal drive? Or was it the touchdown drive? Was it the touchdown drive? Let me go look real quick. It was the touchdown drive. It was right before the touchdown. Okay. So it was after he came out.
Oh, it was the
fake punt.
It was the very next play after the punt fake. Right. They gave him the ball again on the outside.
7 yards.
7 yards.
Yes. Yeah, despite there being a condensed second and third level, because they were at the 13, 12-yard line, something like that, right? Give me something like that again. Give me reverse. I mean, there's just give me some sort of misdirection. They did nothing to slow Duke down.
Right.
They didn't do any bootlegs. They didn't do any play action. They didn't do any they ran like a couple RPOs. They didn't do all the things that this staff has shown at times to do. I mean, like all the bootlegs that worked against NC State, and see any of that.
Right.
And you say, well, somebody asked a good question. Well, did this have to do anything with the receiver issues? I'm like, they actually played way more 11 personnel than I thought they were going to play in this game, like way more. And so I was like, why not run a little bit? This would have been a game for more 13, and they didn't use it. And I think there's some things you could have done with Chris Tyree maybe being the one receiver to where, or you could have gone. They actually lined up in 22 personnel events for the first time all season, 2 backs and 2 tight ends. So there just were some things. I have a feeling that Jared Parker's going to look back and kick himself a little bit with like, man, we had some stuff because like there was like a power play where they as soon as they would see that guard and the tight end go for, they would just bring that safety down and he would just crash off the edge. Like that would have been such an easy, like just do some counter off of it to just take advantage of it, and we just never saw it, and that was a little bit disappointing. There was no, hey, they're doing this really well. Let's take advantage of it. And you say, well, but that's exactly what he did against NC State. That was so effective. Is like NC State had a plan. We're going to take away your run game with this. So they had some stuff built in to hurt it. And early the first drive, we saw some of that, Vince. The 12 personnel with the all verts.
I like the first drive
and all that. Like
I like the
script was really good.
Yes, I said that
the shovel pass to Jeremiah Love.
I texted you guys, I believe. I was like, man, I kind of like that first drive. It was creative. There was a lot going on. Yes, they had to do the fake punt to keep it going. I get that. But I liked the first drive. And I was like, okay, like this is going to be a fun offensive day if they continue to do this.
Yeah. And then they went away from it. Once they got off script. It was very, very conservative and telegraphed in the run game. And Audric was just not getting downhill with any authority in the game. Even when he could have, he didn't really. Yeah. Like we said last night, it was more of an O-line problem, and it was still primarily an O-line problem. But watching the all 22 again, Vince, I did not think Audric got downhill with enough. There's just sometimes, man, you got to get downhill and just say, I'm putting my shoulder down and I'm hammering this. I'm getting an extra yard or two. Yeah. But there still just wasn't a lot of room to work. I would have done something. And then here's the thing is, you know what? Maybe this would have been the game where you should have done some 20 and 21 personnel with Audric in the game.
Yeah. Because he's never really in there.
I don't remember them doing that with Audric in the game last night. No. It was still like some combination of Ford, Price, and Love.
Yes. And that's how it's been
Payne.
Every time.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And Payne. Payne was in there at one point.
I honestly, there might have been one. I don't remember them doing that with Audric. And it's like, in a game like this, that's the perfect time to do it. Because that might be just enough where you run inside zone And instead of blocking the backside or running the lock, you have Jeremiah Love loop around. And if they don't want to do it, if they don't want to play him, then the next play, you run that sucker again.
Yep.
Play action and get it out.
Novel concept.
I just, I'm not talking about like running, or run split flow out of that. Have Jeremiah shoot under, Audric come underneath, and if that guy crashes, you're running an RPO. You pull and just throw that little slide route to him.
Yeah.
There just were some things that you could go to, that I've seen teams go to, that I've even done in the past, that I felt like Notre Dame should have gone to, and that wouldn't be a whole lot different than things they've done in the past. That I was disappointed we didn't see as much of that. So, and then it didn't help either that the offensive line just got their butts kicked, and it was across. I didn't think Joe Alt played very well yesterday.
Yeah,
I thought Blake Fisher went from having one of the best games of his career to one of the worst games of his career last night. I mean, I didn't think any of the linemen blocked well last night. I didn't think anybody played well last night, Vince, to be honest with you. There was not a single offensive line was like, hey, that guy at least played really good. There really wasn't.
And it wasn't, again, I'm not questioning anybody's toughness or drive or any of that. That's not what, because we've done that in the past, and I'm not doing that tonight. Like, that is not where I'm at tonight.
Well, it's not warranted.
Right. Absolutely. Right. Yes. That's what I'm saying. So thank you for clarifying. My issue was there was just a lot of technical issues, like being too high and getting just bull rushed. You've got to keep a wider base, a lower base, so that doesn't happen to you. You've got to. They weren't anchoring properly. There was some slow-footed
wide
stuff
feet,
where they just got.
Vince, we've talked about this with Pat Coogan at times as well, where when he anchors, he gets his feet too wide. That's when he gets in trouble.
And that's when
Duke just punished him for it last night.
Yes.
There was one time they ran a twist, Vince, on a pass pro where Rocco just fell down. He tried to turn and just stumbled over his own feet.
That's where he's like, he just
it wasn't even that one. It was a different
that one. Okay.
It wasn't even that one. He wasn't close enough. He fell down so hard he couldn't hold the guy.
Yeah.
It was in that. It's like Zeke just kind of got into an early funk with the false starts, and then with the guard struggling the way he did. Now Zeke had about 8 or 9 really good blocks up the middle, including on the first touchdown and the last touchdown. But there was a lot of Zeke, you're better than that in between.
Yeah, agreed.
And
we've seen him play better than that
a week ago against
a lot.
Yeah, the Duke. It's not about them being soft or anything like that, but Duke was. But I will say this: Duke was the more physical team.
Oh yeah, they were the aggressor for sure.
And Notre Dame never counterpunched. Part of that was scheme, but part of that was just you didn't do the things you needed to do. You didn't move your feet. Your base. You didn't have good bases. Rocco was too narrow. Coogan was too wide. Blake didn't look like he knew what he was doing half the time, which tells me part of this was preparation. And this goes back to what we said: is Duke did some stuff that was a little different with how they attacked the run game than what they had done before. And Notre Dame wasn't prepared for it early and then never really adjusted to it.
Yeah.
And they were having trouble picking up the stunts. They were having trouble picking up the second level linebackers. I mean, when they run a simple TE twist and your guard is so out of place that he just falls down as he turns.
Yeah.
That you weren't prepared for this game. That was probably the most frustrating thing for me, Vince, was that it wasn't even that the O-line they played hard. They knew what they were doing. Like the Duke O-line, they were prepared for what Notre Dame was going to do.
They just couldn't stop
for the most part. But because they turned the Notre Dame D-line loose, it's like my dudes are better than your dudes.
Right.
It wasn't that. They didn't play well.
Right.
I mean, yeah, they competed and all that, and that's moral victory. Hey, at least they didn't quit or play soft. I mean, but you're a Notre Dame offensive lineman. That shouldn't be the standard. The standard should be you play well and that you look prepared. And a week after praising Joe Rudolph for having his offensive line prepared to play very well against a really good front, they were not prepared for this game. And there just was never any adjustments.
Yeah.
Up front. That was there was no adjustments for the pass rush. There was no adjustments to protect off the edge when the line couldn't get certain guys. Duke did some really good overload pressures where there's just not enough dudes to block. And if it wasn't for Audric Estime's pass pro, Sam Hartman gets hit about 4 or 5 more times.
Yes, absolutely. There was one time where he blocked one guy and slowed up another so that Sam Hartman can get the throw off. And kudos to Sam Hartman for staying in there too.
Yeah.
Because he never got happy feet, in my opinion. Like there were some times where the rush was in his face and he took a shot and he still got the ball off. Now, we know Sam Hartman didn't have a great game, and we'll get into that a little bit as well. But there were times where he stood in there and he took a shot. And I think some of that comes from being at Wake Forest and the manner in which they ran their offense. He's used to being in there and having
Guts is part of the reason you went after this kid.
Yeah,
Guts is part of the reason you went after this kid, right?
I mean,
like Sam Hartman showing guts last night is not like, oh wow, I didn't know he was that tough. He played in this real finesse. No, I knew that kid was tough going all the way back to 2018 when Notre Dame beat his brains in, and he was 185 pounds. Remember that? He was a skinny 185-pound freshman, couldn't grow a beard, and they beat him down. Yes, and he kept getting back up, and eventually Wake Forest kind of threw in the towel and pulled him.
Yeah, they pulled him. I remember
because he just was getting beat up.
Yeah,
physically beat up, but he kept getting up and kept answering the bell. And so that's not a surprise. That kid's taking a lot of hits. Man. There's a couple times he threw off his back foot in an ill-advised fashion, but he could never get into the rhythm. And as we kind of transition into the pass game, Vince, that's something that frustrated me. Is we'll talk about the receivers and some other things, but I want to finish up on the offensive line.
Yeah,
the struggles in pass pro were a big problem in this game because the receivers didn't play well. But there was at least 6 or 7 plays where Notre Dame had a chance to have something. Now, it would have taken a good throw. It wasn't like they were open by 5 yards or anything like that. But it would have taken like the throws he'd been making all game, where you got a couple steps on the guy. There was one particular play, Vince, in the second half where they actually ran a really good sort of a horizontal stretch because they were doing like a lot of vertical stretch, like the high-lows.
Yeah,
they finally ran the flood concept we want them to run, but then they ran it into the boundary with the quarterback sprinting out to his left. One of the worst calls of the game.
Yes,
and there was no room. You don't run a flood like that. Whatever. But anyway, they ran Tobias on a vertical and they caught Duke in a zone, and you could see it. He was getting ready to go back there. He had a route to the right, and he wanted to come back. And as soon as he got the top of his drop, there was 2 guys in his face, like not Duke players, Notre Dame blockers.
Yes,
had gotten driven back into him, and he couldn't step into it. There was another play where he wanted to go to the right to Rico on a post route over the top, and if he could hold the ball for just another second, Rico had a step and a half on that guy. It was a lot like the first post route to Tobias. The coverage was good. But if you get it out there in front, you can make that play.
Yep.
So there was about 6 or 7 chances like that. And against a secondary this good, that's about all you're going to get.
Sure.
Is 6 or 7 plays on top of what we already saw them hit. Right. And then there was the post route where the ball was thrown a little long to Tobias. Then you had the other go route that Tobias beat his guy, but he didn't catch the ball. But there were too many times where the offensive line did not give the pass game a chance. Like, it's like, to Chris Tyrese getting out of an overcut, and he accelerates out of the break, and immediately goes from a step on the guy to 3 or 4 steps on the guy out of the acceleration. And if Sam Hartman has time, there's about 2 or 3 times where it's like, if he could get that ball out, man, holy crap.
But most of the time,
he was already scrambling.
And that's what the all 22 shows. Like, I was watching some of the secondary, and I'm like, oh, he's open. And I look back, and Sam's running for his life. Like,
and those openings are only for a second against
That's
Duke.
Exactly right. And you've got to be able to load up and get it out. It can't be like, oh, I'm ducking and moving, and there's no way to get. It's not like the video games where they can throw it like at a weird angle and all of that. I mean, he's not Patrick Mahomes, right? So he's got to be able to sit, load, and throw. And more often than not, I'm seeing a guy open down the field, and I look back at the pocket or lack thereof, and he's either getting hammered in the front and having to bail, or he's already bailed.
Right.
And so that's why he wasn't able to pull the trigger on a lot of the stuff that we saw that was open after the fact.
There were some things they did scheme-wise in the pass game that I liked better watching the All-22 because I wasn't there. Normally I can have a good feel because I'm there. But since I wasn't able to go this weekend, I'm still bummed about that, man. And but I'll be good this weekend because I don't have to fly, so I'll be good this weekend.
We'll make up for it. Don't worry.
We'll be driving this weekend, but it was definitely, it wasn't great by any stretch. And some of the stuff they did schematically I liked that didn't work because the receivers weren't like the inconsistency of the route running was a concern for me. The choppiness, there's still way too much. Like when you're running an in cut and an over route, you don't need to 2-step it or 3-step it. You got to snap it off and then bend it back. And they're just too choppy on their routes, and it's all of them. It's Rico, it's Chris, it's Tobias. So that's clearly what they're taught, and they've been doing it all year. And just the inconsistency with the releases. There was a time where, Tobias is running a post route, and he attacks the outside shoulder, but he doesn't really stem and get up even on the guy, right? And so then he tries to snap, and he actually has a good juke on the guy, but then he runs the post right into him because he never got inside leverage. The way I taught it is you get up and in on him, and because you got to get the 50-50 break leverage, because if he's playing you inside, he's taking the post away with his leverage, and that's exactly what happened. So Tobias does a nice stick. The guy flips his hips, and if you're even with him, and he flips his hips, you're beating him to the post, and it's a touchdown. Right. But because you didn't get up on him, and we see that all the time with these receivers. It's like teams are taking post away with just their leverage. Now, Notre Dame needs to counter by saying, we're going to take advantage, stem the outside, get him to jump on that, and then take it over the top. Or just take the post, a skinny post over the top, and tell your quarterback to just launch it as far as it can.
Yep. Right?
So there's some things they can do, but the technical aspects of it were problematic as well. And just there was too much inconsistency. Part of that's because you're missing Jaden Thomas, you're missing Jaden Greathouse, you don't have Deion Colsey, and so you don't have that big guy you can just kind of put out there. Like Tobias is tall, but he's skinny and not strong. We've talked about this, and but some of the stuff that was there, just when the offensive line can't give you the time you need on even just half of those throws, Vince, this game maybe never comes down to the end.
Right.
Just hit a couple of those, and this game never comes down to that point. The one play that I still I'm not sure how I feel about it. It was that 4th and 16.
Yep.
And I still will wonder, he might have been able to hit Rico in that hole on the outside. It would have been a tough throw.
It would have been an amazing throw at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But right when he hits the top of his set, right, as Hartman is hitting the top, Rico is the safety had turned his back and was headed towards the middle of the field, and Rico was behind the corner. So there's that cover 2 hole right behind the corner and outside of the safety,
because the safety had turned his hips all the way inside.
His back.
He was actually squeezing down.
Yes,
I think there was a blown coverage because the corner didn't ride with Rico.
No,
he kind of settled, and the safety was running away from Rico. And I think by that point in time, Vince, Sam didn't have the confidence on that drive. When did he ever have time to actually get to that read?
Right.
In his defense. But he ended up making the play that he needed to make. Sure. And man, it was a heck of a play.
And that's, 4th and 16.
Did you see Pat Coogan's reaction after that?
No, I didn't.
So go watch the all 22 and watch the tight version.
Okay.
After he scrambles, Pat Coogan goes like this, and he's like,
it's like I can't believe it.
Yeah, I can't believe it. It was great. And then the other part that I loved about it too, Vince, is as soon as that play happens, right? Joe Alt sprints down there, and he starts yelling at everybody because they're like kind of celebrating, and he's yelling at everybody, like, no, get lined up, get lined up, get lined up. Like Joe Alt's doing that. You're like, that's a captain. That's a captain. That's a captain. He knows the situation. He's not holy crap, we converted it. No, he knows. Hey, we got to spike the ball. And of course, Sam gets up and he's like, spike the ball. But
as soon as he stood up, he's doing the spike the ball thing.
Yep. Right. Yep. So, those are different parts of it, Vince. But overall, it was still not a great pass. I thought they went to the level stuff a little too much. That Duke was just all over. I mean, Duke was just squatting on that stuff. They did run a play that this was the play that I thought if he just could have had another second. They did a thing where Rico went like this in a post, and then Tyree stuttered and went vertical, and they actually did a pretty good job of switching on it. And so the outside guy took Chris Tyree's wide fade. They were actually what they were trying to do is the way that Duke had kind of played this, and I liked what they were trying to do is they were going to take the post, and then they kind of did like a deep stutter, and then Tyree went on like a wheel off of the outside post. Duke actually did a post snap switch, and the outside corner took Tyree. So it was actually a really good job. But Rico ran over top of the safety. If Sam has a little bit more time on that, he can launch that sucker into the end zone and it's a touchdown. But he didn't get time. And so there just was a couple plays like that, Vince, where you say, those are the missed opportunities. You've got to be able to execute. There's a couple times I thought Sam, it's hard to be too critical because you could just tell the internal clock had been sped up so much by the pressure he'd been facing the whole game that he just didn't feel I could go back there. He was pre-snap reading a guy a little more than you'd like because I felt like he needed to, I got to get this ball out quickly.
Yeah.
And, and it was obvious he doesn't trust the outside receivers to just throw go routes. And after the way Tobias played that last go route, I can't, because Tobias won 4 or 5 times on just single high go routes, just beat his guy. And the ball never came, partly because other times the read was to here. And, but then he did throw it to him on the last drive and he drops it. He's playing with zero confidence right now. I mean, we watched the film, zero confidence. And you can't put a guy out there that is playing with no confidence, that can't do simple things like catch a crossing route. That is so kind of panicked on that deep ball that he feels he has to push the guy off. You shouldn't have done that. He didn't trust his win.
Yeah.
And those are things that you look back and say, this is not a kid playing with any confidence, with any urgency. You got to look. I said last night, I'll stick to it again. You need Tobias Merriweather. You need him, but you need him playing well. You need his talent playing the way it's capable of. You can't continue to put him in games in these situations and have him not make those kind of plays. And last night, and here's the thing that frustrates me the most, because I love Tobias as a player. My opinion hasn't changed. I think Tobias has tons of potential. And him playing poor, he's not the first receiver to not play well that eventually becomes a star, right? But the guys that become stars kind of dig deep after their early struggles and say, this ain't happening again. Tobias has to show me he has that. And I don't know that I don't know if he does or doesn't, because he hasn't shown it yet to me, Vince. And the great ones, the true warriors are the guys that have a game like this. And I've seen great players have games they drop 3 or 4 balls.
Sure.
I'm a Broncos fan. I remember I'm trying to remember Rod Smith in the Super Bowl 32 caught 0 passes, had 1 shot, didn't make the play, comes out the next year and he's got, 100 some yards, has an 80-yard touchdown. Like you got to say, how do you respond when you don't play well? And we're going to learn a lot about Tobias, because my frustration, if I'm the receivers coach, is, buddy, you had the opportunity was there for you to go step up and say, hey, we're missing some dudes. I'm getting boundary snaps. I'm going to go out there and win. And they went to him early, third play of the game. That whole play was designed to throw a post route to Tobias.
Yes, it was.
And, I don't know if he'll still catch it if he lays out, but I want to see him try.
Man,
you just got
it was in his hands,
and he didn't accelerate on his post route either. And I know him and Tyree are both dealing with some hamstring injuries as well. Like the whole receiving core basically is dealing with hamstring issues right now, which is a big problem. But it's just kind of like, I need you. You're a great talent. I need you to play with some dog in you. Yeah. And right now he's not. And I need to see how he's going to bounce back, because if he's not going to give me that kind of effort, it makes it even harder to justify accepting those mistakes. And here's the thing that frustrates me is he blocked really well.
Yeah. All the receivers.
Where are you? The whole receiving core, all 3 of them.
All 3 of them. Yeah.
Chris Tyree blocked well. Go watch the last touchdown run. Holden Stace, who did not block well most of the game, had a great block on that. They were doing that inside zone lead play. Yep. He got up and whooped a linebacker, and Chris Tyree took the nickel and washed the nickel all the way down, and Audric cut behind him vertically. Holden Stace and Chris Tyree are the ones that busted that play open. If you go watch that, great blocks by those 2. And, so that was good, but it's kind of like, so it's not that he's not tough. And because he's battling in the run game. It's here. It's all up here. and he's going to have to figure it out because there's too much talent there to just give up on him. But after a while, it's kind of like, buddy, I need you to be better than this. I need you to give me a reason to still have faith in you. And he's going to have to this is a big week for Tobias Merriweather.
Agreed.
How does he respond to this? To this game? Like there was one time he's like frustrated the ball didn't come his way, and I'm like, I don't want to see that from you because you haven't done anything to justify the quarterback looking to you, number one. And then when you did get 2 shots, you didn't make those plays. They both hit you in the hands. One was a little long, but you got to make those plays. He hit you on a crossing route right here. It wasn't a great throw, but buddy, you got to make that grab, man.
Yeah,
got to make that grab. So that was first. I thought Chris Tyree got open. The one mistake he made, I went back and watched. He went way too high on that over route. Yeah. That's why that safety almost paid. He went way too high. If he's about 3 or 4 yards, if he's about 3 or 4 yards, Sam's trying to pin it on Chris.
Right.
But he couldn't pin it on him because Chris was on the same level as the safety.
Right.
If he runs about 4 to 5 yards in front, because he had to get behind the linebacker, and there's a corner over there. But Sam's trying to put that in front of that safety, and he didn't. He went too deep on that. That looked like a bad throw by Sam. That was there's too much depth on over the top
because you have to be able to make the safety as you're coming across. There's another route going here. Right. Safety's here, so you have to. The safety has to make a decision, and he started to go here, which is why the throw was made. But this was so close to here. The safety was able to jump down.
Chris's
That's why
depth.
It was too deep. He needs to be down here so the safety can't play both.
His depth, exactly, Vince. You nailed it. His depth allowed the safety to keep pedaling under the post and still drive on that route.
He covered both routes.
He didn't allow. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Because of the depth of the receiver route. Exactly. Right. That's not how it. Now, outside of that, Vince, I thought the rest of it's just pass pro and a couple times I didn't love Sam's pre-snap read. Those are things that are going to happen in a game. You're not going to like every pre-snap read that a guy makes. But kudos again to Mitchell Evans. I mean, he was just excellent last night. He wasn't getting tons of separation, but he was just making great throws. He actually did a nice job on a couple of those in cuts of kind of leaning up, like leaning out and then snapping it off and getting that initial separation. Yeah. And when he did that, Sam was throwing it right out of his break. Like you can tell Sam believes that I'm going to get the ball to Mitchell. Because some of the balls you're going to throw that ball to Mitchell Evans, but you won't throw that ball to Tobias Merriweather. He's got 2 steps on a guy. And it's like, because I know this guy's going to make the catch, and I don't know that guy is.
Amazing play.
I mean, it's amazing, but that's for a quarterback. It's like that's what you're going to do.
Do you remember there was a report in preseason that Sam Hartman hadn't found his guy yet? Do you remember that? I remember hearing that from someone. It wasn't even us. It was from a different outlet or whatever. And I was like, okay, that's kind of silly. He doesn't. Why does he need a guy? Just trust everybody. But as a quarterback, you've got to be confident that where you're going to throw the ball is going to get caught. And I can tell you right now that you put a gun to his head. Who do you think he's going to throw the ball to right now?
Right now, the 2 guys on the field on Saturday, he had the most trust in were 88 and 17. Correct. You can tell Rico must be making some crazy catches in practice because Sam has a lot of confidence on the ball.
Yes, he does.
He had that one drop, but he made up for it and made a couple really nice grabs. Right. The problem is he doesn't have the size and he doesn't get the separation that Tobias was getting in the game. Right. He wasn't.
Right.
But there's some faith there.
Yeah.
So
and that's
you
that's
just
a legit thing.
Perform better. You got to perform better.
Thing.
Run game wise or pass game wise, Vince. The only other critique is again, I would have liked to seen a couple wrinkles. They just kind of kept running the same levels with the wheel, and Duke kind of played pretty well, and they just kept kind of going back to it. They did make a couple adjustments in the second half to try to get some ISOs over the middle with the tight end. They ran a few more horizontal stretches. I did like that over concept to Tyree. Like that would have been a really nice play because the second half they hit some in cuts to Mitchell. They hit the in cut to Chris Tyree on the first drive of the second half. That was open.
Right.
So we saw some of those adjustments get made. And then honestly, guys, I'm going to tell you right now, if you go back and watch the game, if the pass pro in the second half was better, Notre Dame throws for about 120, 130 yards in the second half alone.
Yeah.
Like there was stuff there for some big plays. There was some stuff there.
Yep.
It just, you couldn't get executed either by somebody. And that's just sometimes where you are. You're just somebody, just every time you run something, somebody doesn't do what they need to do and it stalls your offense. But I was actually a tad more encouraged schematically, pass game wise, coming out of the game. Still didn't love it, but they had plenty of deep routes. Just the time either wasn't there or the throws didn't get thrown. But there's plenty of calls to get the ball down the field in this game. It was a lot more aggressive than I thought it was, to be honest with you.
Yep, I agree.
So, any other takeaways from the offense, Vince, that you want? Run game wise, tight ends were struggling a little bit in this game. Mitchell probably had his least effective. He had a couple nice blocks, but overall his least effective run blocking game. But he made up for it in the pass game for sure. But here's the thing: they both made some big blocks in key situations. And like I said, I did not think Holden Stace blocked all that well in this game, but when they had to put the game away,
he did.
Holden had a great block on the second level. And he went to that. If you go watch it, he went to the second level with purpose. He knew exactly who he had to block. I mean, there was no hesitation. He was like, he leaped over a guy. Like there was an offensive lineman, he kind of hurdled his legs because I got to get to this backer. I think he knew, like, if I get to this backer and Audric gets through the hole, this is going to go, and he did it with purpose. And then he made that great block. And then Chris Tyree just washes that guy down and comes down on it. So run game wise, the tight ends weren't great in this game, but they made some clutch blocks. And as we said, Cooper Flanagan might have had the best block of the day on the first touchdown run. It was pretty good.
I will say this in defense of Tobias Merriweather. There's I mean, obviously he played because they were low on numbers, but he also plays because of the way he blocks. I mean, that is part of it.
That's part of it.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
And everybody's bench him, da 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 da.
Well, right now who?
Right, exactly. Right. And he blocks his butt off. I mean, he does put effort in the run game, and there has to be something said for that.
There will come a time when you're going to have to make that decision with Tobias if things don't change.
Agreed. Absolutely. Yes,
there will.
No question.
But it's not now. It's not this day, right?
No,
what am I thinking of? Oh man, what? No, there will come a time when it's Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. There will come a day when men fall or whatever. He goes, but it will not be this day. I'm talking about the speech that Aragorn gives.
I never watched those movies.
What?
They're actually. I tried to watch the first one like 4 times and fell asleep.
That was very boring. The first one was not great.
Just so I could
get Cliff Notes on number 1 and watch number 2 and 3. 2 and 3 were fun. Or no, watch the last 45 minutes of the first one.
Gotcha.
And then 2 and 3 were awesome.
I trusted you on the Marvel movies, so I might have to do that. I don't know.
And I was correct on those, wasn't I?
You 100%.
Yeah.
I was in.
Because I was like you, Vince. Here's the only reason I watched Lord of the Rings. I never read the books. And I'm like 3 hours. And it's just like, it's a 3. You knew it was going to be 3-part. You always knew it was going to be I didn't care to watch it. And so I was going home to visit. This is back in 2002, 2003. I forget when it first came out. I was going home to visit my family, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to go to the Commodore this weekend. It's this movie theater in Portsmouth, where you eat dinner, and they actually have really good sandwiches and food and stuff." So I was like, "Oh, that's cool. What are you guys going to watch?" And they're like, "Well, we're going to watch the second Lord of the Rings." I was like, "Well, I never saw the first one." They're like, "Well, watch the first one." So I watched the first one. I was like, "Oh, this isn't bad, right? This isn't bad. It's okay." I'm curious to see how because they're 3 parts. They play into each other, right? Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the second one. Second one was awesome. And then the third one was awesome too. So I really think you'll like. Second one to me was my favorite, but the third one was also pretty awesome.
That's fair. That's
awesome.
A fair take. Yeah. I did. You get all the fanboys like, that's
it's the reverse of the Matrix.
Okay, gotcha.
See how the Matrix got worse, and like the first Matrix was phenomenal. Second one was third one was just hot garbage.
Right.
The Lord of the Rings was the opposite to me. It was first one was like, okay, set the stage. It was a lot of setting the stage, a lot of, you know what I mean, for the 2 and 3. They were pretty freaking good. So anyway, Vince, so you have to, but there's a scene in there where he's talking about, there may come a day when, the all these things may fail, but it's not going to be this day. And then there may come a day where you've got to make that decision with Tobias, but it's not right now.
Yeah.
But and Tobias needs to, the one person who can kind of eliminate this being a conversation is Tobias.
100%.
And that's, I want to see what kind of he has right here. And if he has what I think he has and hope he has, this is going to be something that drives him to say, hey, I'm going to come out and get after it.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Because there's a lot of talent in the next class coming in too. And obviously, and I think at the very least, Notre Dame has made it very clear they're not afraid to play freshman wide receivers. So there's a lot of talent coming in, specifically with one guy.
Yep.
So,
yeah. He's so good. Cam Williams is a stud. Micah Gilbert's having a great senior year, and Logan Saldate's having a great senior year. So
lots of talent, man.
They're different types of players. Like Jaden Greathouse and Rico Flores are like possession guys and smart, and Cam Williams is just like a home run waiting to happen. Logan Saldate is really shifty. Micah Gilbert's just 6'2", 215, just a horse. It's a really good core. And this is why you recruit well every year, because sometimes guys get hurt. Guys don't pan out. Sometimes there's all types of things that happen. That's why you got to recruit great every single year. So Vince, that's the defense or offensive breakdown, right? Yes. So we're going to do some, we got about 9 super chats we'll get to, but before we do, folks, again, it's never too early, never too late to hit the like button.
That's right.
Let's get to some of these, we actually have 9 super chats, Vince, but 2 of them are just kind of thank yous. So we have one from David Pantalone. David, thank you very, 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 very much. And then George Delaney.
Nice.
Also, George, thank you very, very, very much. So my man Riza, Vince.
Oh, my goodness.
He came with straight fire today, man.
Riza did come in hot.
Fire, yeah.
Okay. He goes, lifelong Miami fan, but went to Notre Dame. Good choice. Remember clearly an unstoppable 0-1 Miami team that was in dogfights with Virginia Tech, Pitt, and BC. I'm not saying that we're that team or there's an element of survive and improve as you go. Glad we survived. Everything's still in front of us. That's absolutely true, Reason.
Yes.
That was going through my head, in the second half, was like, okay, they just got to find a way to win this game, and they still have everything that they want is still in front of them. If they lose this game, it's over. Like, any chance at a national championship, any chance at the playoff, all of that, it's over. Like, it's over. And so you're just like, man, just find a way. Just find a way. And there's a million different examples that you can use, and Riza has a great one right here, because that 0-1 Miami team was unbelievable. And they were in dogfights in those 3 games. And it's never going to be a 40-point win every week of the season. It's just not. This is college football, man. And they were in a dogfight last night, and they ended up winning the game. And they still have everything in front of them. You're absolutely right, Riza.
It was 0-2 that they were in the dogfight with Pitt. 0-1 was Virginia Tech in the ACC title game. And then, no, actually, that was I don't think that was the ACC. Hold on, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, it was actually the regular season. It was December 1st, so for some reason I just assumed it was the ACC title game. But they weren't in the ACC back then. They were in the Big East. Both of them were in the Big East.
That's right.
And then the BC game, if you remember that one, Vince, they won 18-7. That was a game Ed Reed had that one fumble return for a touchdown. But that was a phenomenal Miami team that absolutely destroyed Nebraska. I mean, they beat number 15 Syracuse 59-0, number 11 Washington 65-7. They beat number 13 Florida State on the road 49-27. Beat Penn State on the road 33-7, and then barely beat number 14 Virginia 26-24 in a really hard fought game. Struggled BC big time, that year. And then in 2002, like you said, they had the Pitt game that they lost. You're just going to have some of those days. You're just going to have some of those days. And, and I talked about this with other teams, Bama 2009, Ohio State 2014, lost at home by 14 points to a 7-6 Virginia Tech team, right? But in every single one of those instances, those tough games were moments of, we got to get better. It's when your character comes out. And we don't know yet if this is what that will be for Notre Dame. And here's the frustrating thing is some of the people complaining the most about, they barely beat Duke, are the same people that I know we've been saying it, but we're the same ones. Like, man, I'm really worried about Duke. I'm really worried about Duke. They're a good football team, and it's right after Ohio State. I'm really worried about this. Was the only trap game we would give any credence to all offseason, right? And guess what? It was a trap game, but they got it done. They won the game. And I'm watching another team that outplayed an opponent for a big chunk of the game, had a 9-point lead in the fourth quarter, and didn't win the game. They choked it away on the road. Right? And that's LSU against Ole Miss.
Yep.
Stuff's going to happen. The great teams win, but the good teams find ways to win. The great teams not only find games to win, but they then go make the corrections and don't repeat those mistakes again.
Right.
That's what we don't know yet. Is Notre Dame a really good team that found a way to win against a really good Duke football team, or are they a great team that uses this as fuel We don't know the answer to that yet. We're going to find that out next week.
Yep.
Or at least a set. We'll see a step taken next week. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Because if you don't regain your momentum offensively next week, it's not going to happen against USC. I don't. I don't think it will
that's too big. Yeah, I agree.
You have another super chat from Riza.
Oh my gosh, Riza's on fire. Thanks, man. Could the run scheme have been an overreaction at the end of the OSU game where they went away from Estime at the very end and had been questioned for it? Felt like they were being stubborn to prove a point.
I don't know the answer to that. It would not surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. Now, you don't want coaches that hear that stuff. And so I hope that that's not the case. I hope it was maybe the head coach said, "Hey, we got to ride number 7 more." Maybe that's it. I don't know, but it kind of felt like that reason. I can't tell you that that's why. I would hope that these coaches don't care what people say. I know Jared Parker doesn't listen to our shows and read our stuff, or listen to anybody else and read their shows. Doesn't mean that somebody else isn't hearing it and saying something, or maybe the head coach hears it. But I'd be shocked if they know that people are clamoring for that. I think they look at it, and most likely they went back and looked at the game and were like, we should have rode Audric more.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Overcorrected a little bit. That happens. It happens. But it did kind of get that sense, like where I would say Riza is, I definitely felt like it was an overcorrection.
Yeah.
Not so much a.
And that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
And it could have been like
we've seen Audric first. No, it's all good, man. Go ahead, Vince.
I was just going to say, I guarantee you it wasn't like a, man, because we're gonna prove everybody wrong. Like it wasn't one of those kinds of things. It could have been like
Driscoll hammered me after the last game. I
better
no,
like that's not the case.
Nor should
now an underlying below the surface man, we really do need to run him some more, and we're gonna make that happen this week. You know what I mean? And when you're calling the plays, it's like, hey, well, okay, you know what? We didn't do this last time, and it didn't work out well for us. Let's run them. Let's do that.
Yeah.
It's not like, number one bullet point on your game plan, but it's like an underlying thing.
It's like, hey, we're not going to lose a game again because we didn't ride our horse. Right.
Yes, exactly.
It's an overcorrection is what I felt more so than they were worried about the public perception and things like that. And I think that's it. And like in Audric in the past is kind of, he's your starter. And then you kind of pull him in the middle and you get your other backs in there and you hammer them. And then you bring Audric in to close. And they were on the verge of doing that last week, and then just got a little bit too.
Yeah, a little
just.
Yeah,
I don't say too cute, but just like, hey, this is what we've been doing. We're staying on our script. We're staying on our game plan. When sometimes in those moments, like, okay, this is our game plan, but right now we have a new game plan. It's called we're riding number 7 to victory.
Right.
Well, they never got there on Saturday. They needed to do other things, and they just didn't do it.
Right.
Now it's about, okay, we overcorrected this way, and then we overcorrected this way. Let's find our sweet spot. Let's get back to being who we were before and just execute better. And that's the key. And that's what I think that they'll do.
Yep.
But hey, Riza, also, buddy, I really appreciate both of those super chats very much.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Vince, I got to bring this one up from your guy. This is your boy.
Oh, Connor, what's going on, man? Good evening, gents. BK blaming, quote, young, inexperienced players, unquote. Could pettiness become its own show as part of the IB network? The petty show?
That would be so. I got to do that with Sean, right? I mean, that would have to be me and Sean Davis doing that one. That would be just like a little funny. I need to talk to maybe Sean about that. I don't know if I'm. I don't know if I could make that like a weekly show, but like maybe now and then Sean and I are like, hey, we got some pettiness we got to get out,
right?
And we do it. But yeah, that would be fun. That would be fun. And I don't talk about Kelly a ton anymore, but. It was so fun to watch that,
and then layup, man.
It's just to hear him constantly making excuses, and like none of it was it was all players. Like it wasn't coaching. It was like they're gonna need to. They know what happened. They're gonna need to see what kind of pride they have. And these are some about young and experienced players. And I'm like, dude, that's college football, man.
Right.
That's college football. You lost in the last time. Last time you were undefeated going to the playoff. You got beat by a team that had a true freshman quarterback, a true freshman 1,000-yard receiver, a true sophomore running back, a true sophomore receiver. Like, dude, you got all this. I keep hearing about all this talent your team has, and all the great recruiting you've done in your 2 years at LSU. and you can't get those guys ready to play, but Notre Dame can play a bunch of freshmen and sophomores and win games like this. Like, come on, bro. Stop with the excuses. I mean, that's just what it is. But that's one thing I'll say. Marcus Freeman is not a perfect coach. He's still learning. He's made mistakes this year. He'll make mistakes next year. He'll make mistakes in year 20. That's what coaches do.
Yeah.
But he's still more of a ball of clay than Brian Kelly is, who just is who he is.
Yep.
Brian Kelly's going to make mistakes. Nick Saban's going to make mistakes. Urban Meyer made mistakes on championship team. It's part of the game. No one's infallible or no one's perfect.
Right. Especially
but the one thing is you got to look at the character of the person. And to me, I have never heard Marcus Freeman ever once hint about a player is the reason why from an excuse-making standpoint. Well, It wasn't us. It was them. If anything, he's ever said, this is on me. I remember last year early when he was like, I didn't understand this and I didn't appreciate this and it was my fault. And it's like he almost kind of like admitted he was inexperienced. And it wasn't he took all the blame. This isn't on my players and my coaches. I'm the one that didn't have this team prepared.
Yeah.
And that's something he's always done and has never been a hint of blame. Because if he ever was going to do that, it was going to be last week with the 10 men on the field thing.
Oh, 100%.
That was a perfect opportunity for him to throw someone under the bus.
Right. Because he had not who
he is.
The buck stops with the head coach. But he had nothing to do with that particular
as the head coach was locked into what's going on, he still should have known. But
of course.
Yeah, but there's other
he could have very easily
direct. Yeah.
Oh, we need to know what package is out there. We need there's a million things he could have said that would have been said in the past and it weren't. He took full blame. It's like, it's my fault. And I've always appreciated that about Marcus Freeman. Always.
I haven't listened to a single Brian Kelly press conference all year until this one, and it just came up on my feed tonight as I was getting ready for the show, and it was like 9
really?
Okay, just let me listen to this. Yeah, it was on my YouTube feed.
That's hilarious. That is great.
And I was like, just let me listen to this
because I sent you that little clip.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that after?
I wonder if that's why. That was before
the whole thing. Was it before?
Yeah, that was before. So I wonder if maybe that's why it was in my feed because the algorithm read that. But it's like, let me just listen to this when I'm getting ready for the show. I was just laughing. I was like, dude, I've been here so many times.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like if people say, why didn't you go to press conference anymore? So I could tell you, I could write the transcript for what Brian Kelly was going to say at his press conference before they had it.
Yep.
I mean, it was just, yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Shiver me fingers.
Which we have done, thank God, with that era of Notre Dame
exactly.
football.
Shiver me fingers. Thank you very much for the super chat. Getting a taste of great quarterback play and what it can do. We have good young talent next year at quarterback, but do you see us basically back to the business as usual, RE, our quarterback strength, or does Notre Dame hit the portal again? Thanks.
Well, I don't really know what you mean by back to business as usual. I don't.
Maybe he just means back to the people that are already on the roster and not having to go into the portal.
I don't know what that means. I would assume they're going to go to the portal again next year. I've said this before. I fully anticipate Notre Dame going to the portal again next year. What I don't know is what they're going to get out of the portal. Are they going to the portal for a veteran guy like Ohio State got with Tristan Gebbia, who they brought in from Oregon State? He'd started the games at Oregon State, but he knew you're not coming here to compete for the starting job. You're coming here to be a veteran presence to help these younger guys learn and develop and be a backup, get ready for coaching. Or is it, hey, we need to go find the next guy,
the next Sam Hartman?
Yes, that I don't think we know the answer to that yet, and I think that's going to be determined over the next couple months. I think the other part of it too is going to be who's out there.
Yeah,
there was rumblings that Sam Hartman was going to jump on the portal before he did, so you kind of knew what the portal was going to look like a little bit. You knew he was out there. You knew Hudson Card was out there as a guy that they liked, and there was rumblings that maybe Tyler Van Dyke, Purdue,
that's right.
And they had a nice win this weekend, by the way. Did you see that? They smacked Illinois this weekend.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because they've been struggling a little bit last couple weeks, but I'm pretty sure it was Illinois. Give me a sec. Pull it up. Yeah, they beat Illinois 44-19.
Wow.
So really, really good performance. Really good performance. Yeah, Hudson was 18-26, 217 yards, 2 touchdowns. Again,
pretty efficient.
It was 37-13 going into the fourth quarter. So a lot of handing off in the fourth quarter. But yeah, real efficient night. And Illinois just can't run the football, man. They just can't run the football. It's a problem. But nice win for Purdue. Nice win. But there was rumblings that Tyler Van Dyke was looking around You know, he just was kind of waiting on the right NIL deal kind of thing. There's rumblings that Drake May might jump in. So you knew that there was going to be some quarterbacks in the portal this past year. We don't know who that's going to be next year. What if it's Jalen Daniels? I don't even know if he has it eligible. I'm just making a point. Well, yeah, guy's a heck of a player, but that's not even close to what fits this offense. You know, so
is Drake May out of eligibility?
Well, he's a redshirt sophomore, but I'm pretty sure Drake May is going to be entering the NFL portal called the draft.
I'm sure you're right. I'm just saying, if he was available, you go get him.
If Riley Leonard was available, then sure, it's got to be a guy that you're just like, dude, I can't not take that guy. Like, I like Hudson Card. I do. I would have taken him at Notre Dame this year, you know, and I would have hoped that Tyler Buckner would have stayed and competed with him. I think Tyler Buckner would have been less afraid to transfer after Hudson Card than Sam Hartman, right?
Sure.
But I'm not taking a Hudson Card next year. It's got to be a Sam Hartman next year. It's got to be a Riley Leonard. It's got to be a Tyler Van Dyke. It's got to be that kind of guy. If it's not that kind of guy, I'm riding with Minchie and Angeli and CJ Carr. Because again, it's you got to look at the schedule too. And if you look at Notre Dame's schedule next year, the opener is going to be brutal, no matter what, right? I mean, you're playing what I think is going to be a good Texas A&M football team. They've bounced back pretty well this year so far. You know, and it's a winnable game. But after that, you're Northern Illinois at home, at Purdue, home against Miami of Ohio, home against Louisville, home against Stanford, at Georgia Tech, and you've got Navy at MetLife. Then you've got Florida State at home on November 9th. So they've got another game to add. I don't know who that's going to be. It's going to have to be added either in October, November. They've got like right now 2 byes in November. So probably one of those games is going to get slated with a game. So once you get through Texas A&M, you've got a month and a half of winnable games where you don't need your quarterback if you need your quarterback to play like Sam Hartman against, second Tennessee State or Navy or whatever to beat Purdue, you got much bigger problems in your quarterback position, right?
Right.
Because the thing is, you got to think the reality of the world of college football is different next year. You don't need to be in the top 4 next year. It's got to be top 12 next year. And so, well, maybe top 10. If they're still in the 6-6, there's a chance that 2 of the conference winners are outside the top 12. And, so like you can take that loss against Texas A&M because hey, we're going to develop Kenny Minchie because we know by the time November rolls around, this kid's going to be really good. And we want to develop our guy or CJ Carr or Steve Angeli, whoever that's going to be. So I'm more willing to it's got to be a dude because you don't have to be in the top 4 next year. We've got to also adjust our thinking about the portal for that as well at quarterback, because it's like, man, do you really want to go to Texas A&M with a rookie? No, I don't, but I wouldn't mind going into home game against Florida State in November with one of those rookies who would then have 9-10 starts under his belt and is really talented, and so those are the things you got to think about, because if you're Notre Dame, I don't need to go undefeated next year. I don't need to go 11. I mean, you could actually technically get in at 10-2 if you're a good enough football team.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so that's a thing that will somewhat impact the decisions that Notre Dame does as well next season is going to be that, because you look forward to 2025, you got A&M at home, you travel to Arkansas, you've got USC again, you got to go to Miami, you've got NC State at home. So your schedule in 25 is going to be challenging as well. Do you want to then say, okay, do you want to go into that schedule and now you're breaking in a new quarterback? Or are we going to keep repeating the cycle year after year after year of, well, the schedule's tough. I don't want to throw a guy we haven't seen before. At some point in time, you've got to let that kid develop. And when it's a 12-team playoff, there's more margin for mistakes and error as you're developing that quarterback than there is in a 4-team playoff. So for me, again, if I'm taking a quarterback next year, it's got to be a dude. This year, Hudson Card, I'd have taken him. Sure. If you couldn't get Sam Hartman, I'd have been cool with that. Next year, and I like Hudson Card, I'm not taking Hudson Card because he's not good enough for me to say I'm slowing the development down of CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie. Just not. Riley Leonard would be, right? I mean, Drake May would be. I mean, there's guys that would be.
Sure.
He's not, but it'd have to be that guy. And even then, it'd take me a minute to, because guys, I think Kenny Minchie can be special. I think CJ Carr can be special.
Yeah.
Like, I want to develop those guys. I do. And now that it's a 12-team playoff, I think you have more reason to justify. We can take a lump. We can take our lumps a little bit in September, because even if we catch an L, we're going to be okay, because we just got to be in the top 10. I mean, that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
So, and I saw a lot of agreement from you during that bench. You have anything you want to add, or are we kind of on the same page on that?
I'm with you. I love the talent in the quarterback room. I mean, especially once CJ Carr gets there.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I do. Well, and I think
there will be more physical talent in the room next year than this year.
For
it
sure.
Just won't be the experience.
Yeah.
You won't have the experience next year.
Exactly. I think it's going to be a hell of a battle. If look, again, depending on who they go and get, because I agree with you. They're going to go get someone. If I was a betting man right now, I think they're going to get a veteran, help the room kind of a guy. That's what I think. Now, if there's a friggin' amazing kid out there you can't not turn down, then yes, you take them. There's no doubt about that, right? But I am intrigued at the quarterback battle that will take place next year. Intrigued, because there's going to be a ton of talent around whoever wins that job. A ton of talent. And they don't need to be the Heisman Trophy candidate.
Jalen Hurts.
They don't need to be that right away. You know what I mean? You got to be a distributor. You got to be a guy that understands. You got to be a leader. You got to be all those things. But you don't have to be Caleb Williams, right away.
All the young talent we're talking about on this football team is going to be a lot more experience next year. I want to say something real quick, Vince. Somebody just was talking about 2-time waivers with Hudson Card. I'm not saying Hudson Card is going to be in the portal again next year. I'm making the point about the type of player. Right. That type of, because I don't know who's going to be in the portal next year. So I don't have an example of who's going to be in the portal next year. I'm talking about that kind of player. So and I can understand why that'd be confusing. So I'm responding to Zachary Ryan. I'm using Hudson Card as an example of the type of player that was in the portal this year that I liked. I'm not saying necessarily that he's going to be in the portal again next year. And because his comment was about how they're kind of denying 2-time transfers and all that kind of stuff. Just so we're clear, I'm not saying Hudson Card's going to go in the portal again next year. I'm just making a point about how that's going to be. So just want to make sure I'm not confusing anybody.
All right. Smooth yet psychedelic. I like that name. All right. What's up with the lack of play action passes with an offense built around the run game and limitations at wide receiver? Why not use more play action to try and generate open shots downfield?
I wonder if this is an analytics thing. There are a segment of the analytics population that will argue play action doesn't actually benefit your pass game. And I'm in the Kyle Shanahan universe of that's dumb, because I think it does. And if you want evidence, go look at the NC State game. Right? I mean, especially in college, I think play action pass is very important for generating big plays. So if I had to guess, and this is 100% a guess, my guess would be, because it's a young staff, that they're probably more analytics. What's the word I'm looking here for, Vince? They're more analytics. They're more willing to kind of be, okay, I'll hear what you have to say. They're more. It's an S word. I'm drawing a blank right here, dude. This is ridiculous. Sympathetic. They're more sympathetic to the analytics arguments than maybe I would at 45, or Mike Denbrock would be close to 50, where it's like, no, I mean, I know what works and that kind of thing. Or Kyle Shanahan, who's younger, but has an old school mindset because he's been, of grown up with his dad. And obviously he's more like his dad than he is modern coaches from a philosophy of football standpoint. He still believes in running the football, still believes in all that kind of stuff in this era where it's about throwing it and doing all that kind of stuff. And that's why I think Kyle Shanahan wins a lot, because he isn't driven by that analytics stuff. But if I had to guess, it would be that. It's because there's some data that they are attuned to that says play action doesn't really add to your pass game. And I think that's nonsense. I think a good play action pass game for a pro style team like Notre Dame that runs the ball like Notre Dame absolutely can be impactful. Like your offensive line gets in their butt kicked. Hey, here's a thought. How about a bootleg? Get your quarterback out of the pocket. Don't have your quarterback be right behind the center every single time you drop. And then the one time you do get him out of the pocket, you sprint him to the left.
To the boundary.
Yeah. The boundary wouldn't even mind it as much if it was the right side. He could have thrown a rope like low and away that Holden could have gone and got.
But
you know what I mean?
But it's just not a lot of room to work.
Yeah.
And it felt like he got to the sideline real fast.
You definitely don't go to the boundary when you're going to your opposite arm because it just takes longer. You have to turn your shoulders and throw the ball. Where if I'm going to the right, I'm here and I'm getting that sucker out quick. We're here going to the left. I got to then turn. Or if I don't turn, I just try to get out quick. I got no juice on it whatsoever.
Right.
Because I'm throwing against my momentum.
Correct.
Essentially, where when I'm going to the right, which is my dominant hand, I've got momentum taking me into the throw.
Right.
So it's just a different animal. So that's my thoughts on that, Vince.
William Chesney, do you think Al Golden lets the D-line loose against USC like he did with Duke, or do you think he's scared Caleb Williams will burn them like last year? I think our DBs can hold up in space. Tackling is scary.
Well, the problem last year was they were blitzing 3 a lot of times against USC.
They were dropping 8. Yeah,
it was really a tackling issue. Look, I'll say this to you, William. It could be. I don't know. Al Golden is a very hard dude to figure out. Like, he does great things one week, and the next week you're like, I have no clue what he's doing, right? And I'm hoping this is 2 of your last 3 games, 2 of your last 4 games, you've had some great game plans. Ohio State was good until the end. The Ohio State game plan was tremendous. If the offense just goes down and converts one more first down, we're talking about Al Golden as being a Broyles Award contender.
Oh, yeah.
Because, dude, you just held Ohio State to 10.
Yep.
You just held Duke to 14. Dude, you're a Broyles, but because they got that L against Ohio State, but that last drive crushed them. They've done a lot of good things this year defensively.
Yeah.
But some of it's just like, dude, what are you doing? And because I'm always looking forward to, you did that against Brennan Armstrong, who I've never thought was that good of a quarterback. I always said he's not as bad as he was last year. He's not as good as he was in 2021. He's closer to last year's version than he is the 2021 version this year so far. They didn't have a lot of weapons. Duke's got good players, not great players. I'm saying, okay, I don't care if it works against Duke, but will it work against USC? And my whole thing is what they did against Duke is a lot more likely to work against USC than what you did against Ohio State or even NC State to a degree, because you turned your D-line loose. And if you can get a push up the middle, because here's the thing, last year, where'd all the pressure come from against USC last year? It's off the edge. So Caleb either spun out or he stepped in. What was so good about the Duke game, which gave Riley Leonard problems, is that it was coming right up the middle. And so they were collapsing the pocket off the edge and up the middle. And here's the other thing too, is Riley Leonard's a really athletic quarterback. He's actually more of a runner than Caleb Williams is as far as usage. Caleb Williams is a very dynamic guy, but they don't run him as much, nor should they, because you don't necessarily need it. There'll be times when they'll let him run a draw or scramble or whatever, but Caleb Williams has 83 yards rushing on the year. Riley Leonard's over 200. It's just, it's a different type. Now Caleb will do it against Notre Dame if he has to, no doubt. So if it worked against Riley, then I'd say, find ways to make it work against USC. Maybe some of it has to be more specific to USC, Vince, but I hope it's a blueprint. Adjusted each week, wrinkles each week, but I hope it's a blueprint to what they need to do next week. So, yep.
Fort Wayne Irish.
Me when you were down there, doing all this, giving me the courtesy nods as I'm talking. Yeah,
I was listening, but yes, I was. Yeah. Anyway, seems as though this team lost part of their identity / soul, losing to Ohio State. Now fragile and searching. What will it take for them to get their mojo back? Well,
I just
they got it back in the last 2 minutes. I mean, I wouldn't say that they lost their soul.
I don't think they lost their identity or soul. They played bad.
Yeah, they
guys.
Played
that
poorly.
Crap happens.
Yeah. Right.
They didn't play well. If they lost, okay, let's just grant the premise, Vince, that he's correct.
Okay.
To your point, they got it back in the last 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Defense made a stop. Offense went on a drive. They got their mojo back.
Yep.
Okay. I don't think that was the issue. I think mentally they did not recover well from the Ohio State loss. But I don't think it's about they lost their soul. I think it's because they knew they were the better team. And they didn't play like the better team when it mattered most, which is why in the end, Ohio State was the better team, right? It's the polar opposite. Because what did we say going into last week's game? Notre Dame was the better team for 57 minutes.
Yep.
And then Ohio State was the better team when it mattered most. Well,
Correct.
I say it again, it's polar opposite of this game.
Absolutely.
Now, well, kind of. Notre Dame was clearly the better team in the first half. Like,
oh my gosh, yes.
It should have been like 24-3 in the first half. I mean, clearly the better team. But they got thoroughly outplayed by Duke in the last 27 minutes until the last 3. So I just don't think they moved on well from Ohio State, because I don't think they lost their confidence. I think they didn't handle their pissed offness of losing the right way, a healthy way. They weren't focused. They weren't locked in. And I don't think they thought Duke was going to be as good. I don't think they had the same respect for Duke that you and I did and Ryan and I did.
I think that's fair.
I think that's part of it too. Like, I think they walked in and like, we're going to smack this team. And then Duke was like, no, you're not. And Duke was very confident, Vince.
Yeah. And they came ready to play. Like, that was a prepared team.
Oh, this is funny. I like this.
Tyler Evans to the media saying that Notre Dame can't count to 11. We can count to 30 ACC victories in a row.
Regular season. We got to put that caveat on there.
Because they lost badly to Clemson in the ACC championship.
Right. It's regular season, 30 straight regular season wins, and there's also a loss to Clemson in the playoff during that time. But still, 30-2 is still pretty good.
Yes.
So because they got what? Did they get 1 at the end of 17? Do you remember, Vince?
Oh, man, I don't know. You're better.
Because I know they lost to Miami. That's the last regular season game that they lost in the ACC. Was to Miami in 2017.
That was a beatdown. Yeah.
That was the last ACC game of that year. So beginning in 2018, and here's the funny thing. You know who the ACC streak began against? Do you know who it was against? Wake Forest in 2018.
That was the one where they beat the crap out of Sam Hartman.
That was the beginning, because the last time they played an ACC game, Vince, was the Miami game at the end of 2017. They played Navy, Stanford, and LSU after that. And then to start 18, they played Michigan, Ball State, and Vanderbilt. So the 30-game win streak began against Sam Hartman and Wake Forest. Sam was a true freshman at that time. And that kind of I didn't realize that till just now. And he'll look for 31 this weekend. So I do like that. It's been dominant. And I just love it, because all the crying that they've done this offseason, we got to beat Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's getting this vote. I'm like, well, if you want to do something about it, beat them. Yeah,
or send bad refs. All right, Nathan Milton.
But that's the other thing. They've done this 30-game winning streak despite constantly getting screwed by ACC officials constantly. And it's like, what is it, 16-11, right? Every game, and they still can't beat Notre Dame.
Right.
And they can't cheat much harder, man. I mean, they're overturning things they're not even allowed to legally overturn. It's just like,
review them. It's unbelievable.
So bad.
Like
so
that. Bad. They should suspend that whole crew.
Like 12 penalties to 2. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, bro.
Nathan Milton, where does Riley Leonard rank as far as quarterbacks Notre Dame has played or will play this year? Number 2?
Number 1 on who they have played so far. Number 2 on who they will play.
Yes.
He's better than Jack Plummer at Louisville, who's doing a nice job this year. But Notre Dame knows Jack Plummer. They've beat him 2 years in a row.
2 different schools.
At 2 different teams. Same coach in 2 of them. He's better than Phil Dracovic, who's just not even close to the same kid he was in 2020. He is better than Cade Klubnik right now, by far. Cade may eventually be better, but right now, definitely better than Cade Klubnik. He's better than Mitch Griffith at Wake, who I believe is still their starting quarterback. And I don't know who the starting quarterback is at Stanford anymore, because they're playing 2 kids now. But he's better than every quarterback Stanford has in their roster. So the only quarterback that's better than him on what they have played or what they will play as an all-around player is Caleb Williams. Now, Kyle McCord played very well against Notre Dame, but if I had to pick right now who I'd want as my quarterback, I'm still taking Riley Leonard. If he's healthy, I'm taking Riley Leonard.
Trevor,
I'll say this, Vince. I'm sorry. Last thing. If the D-line would have been allowed to play against Ohio State the way they were against Duke, then we wouldn't be talking about how well Kyle McCord played. And that's no shot at Kyle McCord. It's just nobody's going to dominate you when they're constantly people in their flipping face the whole game. So sorry about that.
That's all right. Trevor Rocket from Canada. Good evening, lads. Late to the show, but I just want to give Howard Cross some love. Last week against Ohio State, and even more so last night against Duke. Just a trench dog and relentless. There's no
Has
doubt
he
about
had
it.
a game that he wasn't very good yet? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like,
I've given out game balls to him already.
Central
and I
Michigan,
don't-
maybe. It's the
yeah.
only game I didn't think he played great. Nobody played great on defense in that game. But he's been a dude all year, Vince. An absolute dude. 13 tackles and 3.5 tackles for loss for a nose tackle.
Right.
That's nuts.
Raymond Harton, a win is a win. Must be better next week. Great show, guys. Thanks, and go Irish.
That's right. Survive in advance, right? And grow.
Yeah, man.
Get better. I mean, we've seen
Exactly.
teams in the NCAA tournament, Vince, like survive first round potential upsets, second round potential upsets, and then go on and win national championships. You know what I mean? Like, that's part of it, right? I mean, hey, we didn't play well, but we learned from it. And the next week we went out and did what we needed to do and handled our business and won a championship, So yeah, I mean, that's where you got to be. And then our last one is not really so much a super chat, but a super sticker.
Ah,
so there we go.
3. Thanks,
Yeah,
Ed.
Appreciate you, Ed.
Appreciate you very much.
Man.
And you know what else I appreciate, Brian? I appreciate everybody that's tuned in. All 665 of you. Really appreciate you guys sticking around and checking out Upon Further Review. Again, I said it at the opening and I'll say it at the close. Reviewing film after a W is always better.
Oh, yeah.
Even though there's a lot to fix and a lot to grow from and a lot of things that I hope we don't see on film again, knowing how it ended made it a lot easier to watch this film today.
Yes.
I put off watching the film so badly last week. I just did
That's
not
why
Vince,
I put it off so bad we didn't even do a show on Sunday because like dude,
we did it on Monday. That's right. We didn't. I just did not want to watch it.
I took a mental day off from breaking down the Notre Dame game.
Yes, absolutely. So, hey, Notre Dame got it done when it counted, and that's what matters. But they've got to bounce back. They've got to do a better job. So tune in this week.
Another
Monday.
Undefeated opponent who's ranked in the top 25. I called it. I said if Louisville beats NC State, they're going to jump into the top 25.
And they're
25th. That matchup. Yep.
They're 25th as of today. So, top 25 matchup on the road. It's going to be another electric atmosphere that Notre Dame's going to have to deal with.
I saw Notre Dame's PR department put something out today, Vince, that I believe they said this is the first time that Notre Dame will have played 3 straight AP top 25 teams since I think it was 2003. Let me just go look that up real quick. So when they play Louisville, it'll be the first time since I believe it's let me find it here real quick. It was first time they've placed since 2003. And when they play USC the next week, it'll be the first time since 2000 that they've played 4 in a row.
Wow.
So, and then that streak will end when they play Pitt, no matter what Pitt does between now and then, because Pitt stinks. But don't be shocked if Clemson's in the top 25 when they play them.
Oh, yeah.
A big win this weekend as well. But yeah.
Yep.
So there you go.
So, hey, big week coming up.
Played a tough schedule. Imagine that, Vince.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's always nice. I enjoy the patty cake schedule. It just makes my life so much easier. So, yeah, make sure you guys tune in all week, man. We got all the afternoon shows. We got the Monday mailbag tomorrow. IB Nation Sports Talk at 6 as well. So make sure you guys tune in. Going to be a lot of good stuff in there. We'll break down the Marcus Freeman's press conference and all of the fun stuff that he has to say there. So thanks for joining us for Upon Further Review. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell because you just never know when another show is going to pop up. And then give us a 5-star review. Tell your family and friends. Really appreciate that. So for Brian, I'm Vince. We'll talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.
And I'm about to go watch that Paul Burmeister Ryan Harris call again on the last 2 plays.
Oh, I saw it.
That's what I'm going to do now. See you, everybody.